Uh, I forget which lesson. I think this is lesson 7, 8, 8, 8. Lessons from patches and wineskins. That's kind of a of an interesting title to a lesson, but I have a question for us as we begin, and it's a question, but I'm going to make a statement and then to kind of see what you think. Uh, my question to you is, or my statement to you is, making choices is the most important voluntary action that we take each day. Now, I will repeat that. Making choices is the most important voluntary action that we take each day. Do you agree or disagree? What do you think? You think that that's the most important thing that we do all day? Do what? What'd you say? Do you say your wife does? You leave that to your wife. Jim leaves all that to his wife, so there's not lots of choices there that he has to make. No. Is our I mean, think about it in the perspective of the choices that you have to make all day long. Okay. We are constantly making choices. Now, some choices are, they're very easy to make. Um, for those of us who are still, working, getting up and going to work. I mean, it's a choice we make, but it's pretty easy choice if that's what your responsibility is. Um, there's a lot of of choices that we make that we just that we feel like we have to do. But then again, there's a lot of choices that come along that we can choose one thing or another. We can go one direction as opposed to the other in whatever we do, and whatever we choose, and that, folks, is what determines our day and our destiny. Is that multitude of choices that we have to make during the day, I'll ask this question too. When we think about the criteria that we use to make these decisions, make these choices all day, what are going to be some of the factors that we use to make these decisions? Well, um, importance. Uh, is it beneficial? Is it uh, uh, is it practical? Does it fit my needs? Is it something that is expected? Uh, will I be punished if I don't in some way or another? All of these, I mean, when you're making your choices during the day, there are all of these factors that are going on to help you decide, or that you're using to help you decide what you need to do in those circumstances. Here's one that I think that kind of puts it in perspective. The speed limit is 50 miles an hour. Okay. You choose to drive 50 miles an hour. Why do you choose to drive 50 miles an hour? Do you choose to drive 50 miles an hour because that is the law? And if you violate that, you're going to be in trouble. Otherwise, you might not do it. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of how many who have broken the speed limit here. But my point is, do you do it that because of that fear of what happens, or do you do it because you have determined, and based on what others think, and I would guess it's the Department of Public Safety has determined that on that road, 50 miles an hour is a safe speed for you and for others. And so I want to be safe for myself. I want to be safe for others. And so that's why I drive at the speed limit. Now think about that for a second. Why Why do you drive at 50 miles an hour? You know, and my wife, my wife, my wife is, she doesn't know what 50 is. She's never. No, we're laughing because that's probably a real bad example, especially for my wife. Um, but no, it does bring the point that those are some of the criteria, or a big part of the criteria that we use to make choices and decisions all the time. Is there going to be a punishment because of it? Is there an expectation because of it? Or or is it because it is the right thing to do? It is what we need to be doing out of a sense of obedience, out of a sense of care, uh, whatever that motivates us internally. Okay, then we move. Then that's the reason for the choices. Making choices just based on potential punishment in whatever form that takes. It may be direct, may be indirect, may be visible, may not be. I mean, all those kind of things play in that. But just the point is that what is motivation for our choices? And the reason I bring that whole thing up, because today we're going to talk about the uh, Pharisees, and as they approach Jesus and are asking him a pretty profound question that challenges their beliefs, um, Jesus really throws it back on them more or less to say, why, why are you, why are you making that choice? Why are you doing that? You need to ask yourself, why do you want to do that? And he's going to give us examples of if we don't do that, if we don't question ourselves in what kind of choices we may be making, particularly in spiritual matters, then we could get off base. We could get headed down a wrong direction. We've got to keep in mind what is the real motivation and the real reason that we need to make certain choices. And when it comes to our relationship with Jesus, do we pursue it out of a traditional adherence or out of genuine love? I don't want anybody to answer this question uh, this morning. I just want you to think about this. Are you here either on Zoom or in Sunday school out of a sense of tradition and expectation, that a sense of it's Sunday morning and I need to be in church? Been there all my life. I don't miss Sundays, and so I need to be there. I need to be there. Or do you come with a sense of it's a true and genuine love for Jesus, and I want to learn more about him. I want to be with fellow Christians to be encouraged or to be an encouragement. Do I want to do that? And that's kind of foundationally part of this story is, okay, what's the motivation and the reason that they're doing the things that we are. And so we're going to take a little bit deeper look. I will say that today's lesson marks the third time in our study that Jesus has ruffled the feathers of the Pharisees. If you recall, the first time he did, a couple of weeks ago when we studied about he offered forgiveness of sins. Pharisees, they got in a panic because only God can do that. Okay. Then the last week he was eating with tax collectors and sinners and all the unclean folks that you're not supposed to be around. Okay, well now he's doing that, and that really got him. Well, now this week they're going to challenge him on following tradition, the law, I'll phrase it that way. They're challenging him on the law, and why he and his followers don't seem to be following the law as they should. But it more than just a narrative about disagreements. The really exciting, the really important part of these stories is that these lessons that we're studying right here, this is the beginning of Jesus's ministry. All right, this is the first part. This these lessons herald the inauguration of the new covenant. That's what's happening here, and that's what's causing the strife and conflict between, particularly between the religious leaders of the day and Jesus and his teaching. That's what's going on and happening, and that's where their struggle is coming from, is because here is that new covenant. They have been accustomed for millenniums to the old covenant. All right. One Daniel talked about this morning, you know, that covenant with Abraham, uh, that make them the chosen people. All the people of the earth will be blessed by them. I mean, that's what God told them. And uh, so the idea for the Israelites is we are blessed. We need to follow what God has laid out, what He wants done, and that's how we're going to be the people that He wants us to be, and the earth shall be blessed because of that. Um, so we're this today we're going to talk a little bit about, or a lot about fasting. The question comes about because of fasting, and just a little bit of background on that is that uh, fasting obviously is the voluntary uh, cessation of taking in any food for a certain period of time. But early on, God commanded it, and in Leviticus, in the 16th chapter, verses 30 and 31, this is what he says to them. For it is on this day that atonement shall be made for you to cleanse you. You will be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It is to be a Sabbath of solemn rest for you, that you may humble your souls. It is a permanent statute. Okay, what is being said there is on the Day of Atonement, and the Day of Atonement, we know what that is. On the Day of Atonement, that the high priest goes into the Holy of Holies and makes atonement for the sins of the people. What God has mandated there is that be a day, and He calls it. What He says is that you may humble your souls. Well, the interpretation there for them is that in that humility, they're going to put nothing in front of being obedient, being mindful, being remorseful, uh, uh, just everything on that day. Because what's happening is they're being forgiven of their sins. And so on this day, it is a day to do nothing but focus on that, on what is going on and what is happening. So it is, it is tradition. It is certainly part of the law that is there, and so they're following now. Uh, Fast forward several hundred years, and what has happened now is that it's kind of become a little distorted in a sense of why they're doing it and what the particular reasoning and circumstance is that they need for to be doing, to be fasting. There's fastings when they're sorrowful. There's fastings when they're joyful. And God only mandated that you do it one time a year on the Day of Atonement. That's all He mandated. But it has become uh, really fashionable, particularly for the religious leaders of the time, uh, to participate in fasting, and they don't just do it once a year. They don't even do it just once a month. They don't even do it once a week. They are doing it twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. Okay. And because they want all to know how religious that they are in following the law, even to the point that they put ashes on their face to make them look pale and, I guess, have a look of, being weak and emaciated and those kind of things. And they would also ruffle their clothes up to make it look like, they're in a sorrowful, pitiful state. Okay. This is what's happening, and they are committed and following that. Okay. So this idea of fasting for them is very important. But what we're going to see is as Jesus comes along, maybe it's not exactly the way that they think it should be. So we're going to pick it up here now in Mark in the second chapter, and I'm going to read verse 18. Uh, Mark in the second chapter, verse 18. Okay, here is the here's the scripture. John's disciples, John the Baptist, and the Pharisees were fasting, and they came and said to him, being Jesus, why did John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast? Ooh, big question here. Big question. Why? Why do you not fast? Okay. Little bit of immediate background on this. As we know, and we've seen over the past few weeks of study, that Jesus' popularity is really beginning to grow. He started out in Capernaum. He went out through Galilee for a while. He came back to Capernaum, and then there's really big crowds and lots of things going on. So Jesus's popularity is really beginning to increase. Think in just a moment about that. The question comes, what what was he what was he doing? What was he saying? Now, we certainly know about the miracles, but we also know that within the miracles, he is trying to communicate to folks that's not his primary goal in being here, is just to heal the sick. Certainly he does that. And those folks and all of us are most grateful for that, but that's not the primary reason. But it is evidence of his divinity. But even beyond that, he had to be preaching a word that was very important, very important to the people of the time, and to begin to get this following. Not all of them were, obviously, not all of them were in need of miracles of healing. All right, but I ran across an article this week about uh, Emma Lazarus. She was uh, an author, particularly a poet, back during the mid 19th century. And anyway, she wrote a poem called New Colossus. And anyway, the New Colossus is the poem that was adopted for use on the Statue of Liberty. And lines from it that you probably do remember. Give me give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Okay. So when you think that's almost an an allegory to what Jesus's ministry is. I mean, as I read that, it clicked with me anyway. And it's, you're tired, you're poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. I'm thinking for people who are caught up in bondage of sin, it's it's very, very similar. I mean, those parallel one another. And this came from a lady who was a actually a Jewish activist, big Jewish activist at the time. But just the point of it is that that really parallels kind of one of the more symbolic statements that's made about our country and who we are and what we are. I mean, it really does reflect what Jesus is. Jesus not bringing the good news, that kind of news to these people who feel like that they are oppressed. They've been chosen as God's people, but it hadn't really played out like that just yet. And so, and then even for the people beyond that, you know, that really are in need of some comfort, some support, some hope. Well, this is what Jesus brings. That's why he's got the crowds that he's got. That's why all these people are following him. And now it's to the point that what he's done, even the Pharisees recognize who he is because they put him in the same category with John the Baptist, who they recognized as religious authority, and the Pharisees. So they put him on the same level. That's how his message has come from the very beginning. And for the religious leaders, it really does aggravate them that here is this guy who's not been a part of the club all the way along, and now he's teaching this. So we pick it up here in verses 19 and 20. So Jesus said to them, while the bridegroom is with them, the attendants of the bridegroom cannot fast, can they? So as long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. But the days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast in that day. Okay. Uh, in the scriptures, we find examples of weddings being used all the time. Um, and primarily for the example of the groom's commitment to the bride and the bride's commitment to the groom. That's the fundamentally. I mean, let's face it. That's the two are making a covenant of love between the two, and so very often Jesus describes himself, as you well know, he describes himself as the bridegroom, and the church is his bride. Okay. Well, here again, he's using that example, but in this particular case, what he's saying is, while the bridegroom is there at the wedding, okay, he is with everybody. So one of the things, even if it was one of these Mondays or Thursdays that everybody was practicing, or the religious leaders were practicing fasting, or if it was a called out fast by the, religious leaders of the time, Jesus is saying, no, not during that time, because the bridegroom's with you and you are there to celebrate with the bridegroom. One of the things in Jewish weddings that found interesting, and it really does make sense, but the groomsmen, it is their responsibility. It is their responsibility to see that things go well at the wedding. All right, that things keep moving. And as you well know, weddings back at that time went for a week or more. I mean, these were long celebrations. But the groomsmen had the responsibility of keeping things going, attending to what the bridegroom needed, what the bride needed. That was their job. So the example here is that Jesus is saying, in essence, I'm the bridegroom. Okay. The groomsmen are all here. And so they don't need to be fasting right now. One of these days, the wedding will be over, in essence, for purposes of his example. The wedding will be over and the bridegroom will be gone. Then you can go back to you're fasting. Then you can return to that. But while the bridegroom is there, in other words, Jesus is saying, while I'm here, you don't have to do the fasting. The fasting and the concept and idea is the time you need to be sorrowful, the time you need to be remorseful, the time that you need to really pull away and reflect on things. And he's saying, I'm here. I'm here amongst you. I'm here with you. We have work to do. So that's what we're going to be about right now. We're going to take care of the business at hand. And then he goes on then in 20 and 21, and he says to them, no one sews a patch of unshrunken cloth on an old garment. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear results. No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skin, and the wine is lost, and the skins as well. But one who puts new wine, but one puts new wine into fresh wineskins. Okay. He's people would be very familiar today. We don't, we're not as familiar with that idea and concept of patching as once we were, as once as these people were at the time. But it is the idea that you take an old piece of cloth and you put a new patch on it. Well, when it washes, what's going to happen? If that new cloth has not shrunk yet, and when it does shrink, then what it's going to do is tear away, make a bigger hole. You're going to, it's even going to be a bigger problem. So you're not going to put that, to put that on there. And the truth is, Jesus did not come to patch up the shortcomings or not the shortcomings. That's wrong to say, but he did not come to uh, uh, come back and just patch up what they had, what they had and what they were doing. Jesus came to make it new. Jesus came and says, I have a new covenant. I have a new covenant, guys. That's why your question about fasting is really not valid. The question about fasting is not even valid at all because it only mandated once a year, and now they're doing it, all the time. But uh, uh, but the truth is, what he's saying is, no, you don't want to do that. I did not come for that. I did not come to do that. I came to give you something new. And then where he talks about the wineskins, you take these old dried out wineskins, and what happens is when you pour the wine in it, and the wine sets for a little bit, ferments, and then begins to expand with the gases and all. Well, what's it going to do? It's going to burst the wineskin, and you're going to lose all the wine from it. Okay. So again, this idea of making new, of making new again, and that's the message that they are having trouble with. That they really can't grasp as well is that he's he's come for something different. He didn't come to just patch up. Now he has not come to abolish all the other. He's come to make it better. The other night in the teachers meeting, Pam Woodbury had a terrific um, uh, uh, example of making something new. She had a tire that kept going low on her, so she took it to get repaired. All right, and so they put a patch on it. Okay. Well, what happened was she drove around for a while, and the tire kept losing air. All right. Well, she went back up there and said, "Hey, fellas, my tire is still getting low. It's still going down." Well, they took a look at it and said, "You know what? That patch is not holding." Said the patch is not holding. I need, or what you need is a new tire. And so she got a new tire, which made her very happy having to spend that money. But just the point is that she did get it. She did get a new tire. But think about this: the tire that's on her car, it's still a tire. It's Car is always going to have the tire. You need that to go. All right. Nothing out of the, nothing extreme happened other than something that she had was made better. Now it's better. The old tire and trying to patch it didn't work, you know, didn't hold, didn't do what it was supposed to. But she winds up getting a new tire. But again, it's still a tire. It's what the car sits on. It's what rolls when the car moves. It's still the tire. That's I think, very appropriate uh, analogy for what we're talking about with Jesus. It's it's still belief in God. It's still foundationally and fundamentally the same thing. It's just a different approach. It is newer and fresher. Okay. Um, Jesus said, in the same way, after the supper, at the Last Supper, in the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." Well, he says it right there. In this cup is the new covenant, which is my blood. In other words, I have come to make something new. My favorite verse in all of Scripture is Revelations 5:21, and it says, "He that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new." And I, I, I love that because of the fact that he does. That's what he does. He doesn't just he doesn't just repair. I mean, he does repair. He does fix. But also at the same time when he fixes, he makes it better than it was. You know, when and that's the important thing for us to take away. He makes it better than it was. Yeah, he'll fix it, but he comes to fix it to make it even more appealing, more worthwhile for us than it was before. He didn't throw the old away. He just made it better. He just made it better, and that's what he does. And so our lesson from the wineskins and the patches, you know, um, it's still it still needs a wineskin, still need a piece of cloth. Uh, he just come to make them better. That's all. He just came to make it better. Pharisees obviously had big trouble with seeing this, understanding this, because they were so ensconced in the old ways and what they did. This new thinking and this new man coming to teach, which was gaining momentum by the day. Uh, Certainly had fear, but the fear is founded in the fact that, man, he's not following the old way. He's not following the old way. And Jesus says, no, I'm not. No, and I'm not going to, because a new day has come. That's what we've got to hold on to. He makes all things new. Any comments or questions or anything anyone may have? Okay. Um, then we'll close in a word of prayer. Yes, sir.
I think I pray for you that my knee surgery will make all things new.
Yes, sir. Amen. Ken mentioned my knee surgery, which I appreciate all the prayers for that. It's on the 16th, and I would like for I'd like I am glad that it is going to be new. That all things relevant to my knee will be new. So I'm really glad about that. So, and my wife is too. She's sort of tired of me whining, and so we'll be looking forward to that. Anything else?